So here are 7 questions with regards to Itauma. Question number 1. Is Itauma being rushed, or are critics simply uncomfortable with how quickly exceptional talent can develop? I'm not sure if he's being rushed. I'm not sure if that premise is true. I think some boxing critics have been overly critical with stating that he hasn't updated. How can I put this? They're stating that he hasn't updated the challenges enough, or the competition hasn't been strong enough. And I think that's objectively not true. He's fought Jermaine Franklin, he's fought Dillian Whyte, and he's fought McKean. And these people have respectable careers. These people, Dillian Whyte was in the top 5 at one point. Jermaine Franklin had some very respectable performances against AJ and Dillian Whyte. He took them both 12 rounds, and he showed to be durable and had good ring intelligence. And McKean had a very good performance against Filip Hrgović. So I think there's a camp that says he's been moving too slow. And I think I don't think there's any rationale behind that at all, because clearly he hasn't been moving too slow. He's been moving relatively quite fast. Then there's a camp that will say he's moving at the right speed, but then there's another camp that might say, oh, he's moving too fast. In determining that question or answering that question, it depends how the machine has been developed to handle the second half of the fight. If for any reason he goes in against Filip Hrgović and falls apart in the second half of the fight, then the answer to that question maybe would be yes. But there's no evidence to suggest that. And you would hope that Ben Davidson, being a highly respected trainer with a wealth of experience, would be able to, he would be able to tell if his fighter has an engine or not, and they would be able to make the appropriate adjustments to ensure that, let's say if his engine from 1 to 10 was like a 5, that they're moving it along to 6, 7, 8, before he's getting into situations where he can go into some sincerely dark places. So I guess if you're out of camp, moving too slow, moving at the right time, or moving too fast, I think it's maybe at the right time. Maybe, if anything, it's a bit too quick, but I wouldn't say he's moving too slow. That's definitely not the case. Question number 2. Does refusing AJ and Tyson Fury show respect, or is Itauma turning down the perfect opportunity for a passing of the torch moment? Itauma fighting AJ would be a massive event. It would have huge cultural relevance. There would be huge money. It would enter the boxing algorithm. Everyone would want to tune in to see that fight. The risk of that fight would be that if Itauma battered AJ, I don't think we would want to see that. We wouldn't want to see AJ retiring on his stall. However, there are other scenarios. AJ could pull off the upset, assuming he's the underdog, or he could put up a gallant performance like Frank Bruno did against Lennox Lewis and then lose. I think a courageous loss, that can be a good passing of the torch, like when Vladimir Klitschko passed on the torch when he lost to Anthony Joshua. But we don't want to see our legends battered and beaten. And I think that's the same with Tyson Fury. There's a difference between being beaten and being battered into submission, and we don't want to see that. The third question, if Hrgović survives the early rounds, what happens when Itauma is forced into territory he has never experienced professionally? Well, this is going to be interesting, and it's depending on a few factors. Will Hrgović be damaged in those early rounds? Would he have experienced some cuts? And would he be competitive in those early rounds? If the fight is competitive in those early rounds, then the middle rounds become more interesting. If Hrgović is simply surviving, then that still gives Itauma the advantage. But we're assuming that Filip Hrgović, will he survive? From Filip Hrgovic's perspective, he might be thinking, well, will he survive my onslaught? Filip Hrgović is a fast starter. He's a confident fighter. He asserts his authority straight away. So this could be a real battle of nutrition at the beginning. This potentially could be a firefight, but it depends on the tactics that both fighters employ. But if we go into the second half of the fight and Itauma isn't dominating, then Filip Hrgović could really start to, use his experience and use his ring IQ to try and get some leverage. But we'll see. It'll be funny because we'll see a different Itauma, and Itauma will discover there's the potential that if it goes into the second half of the fight and under the right conditions, that Itauma will start to find out things about himself that he might not have known. So it's very fascinating, very interesting. The fourth question is, can Itauma's discipline and preparation compensate for his lack of experience in long, difficult fights? It depends. If that preparation creates elite conditioning, then potentially yes. But if he has a conditioning issue and a lack of experience, then this could become exceptionally problematic. I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that he has any stamina issues. And if anything, Itauma is a fast fighter. He has fast feet and very fast hands and is exceptionally accurate. There's no evidence to suggest that he would slow down. His weight might be interesting. Will he come in heavy? Will he come in at his regular weight, or will he come in lighter? That might be an indication of how he will approach the fight. But in any case, a long fight means that there will be a test, because if you're going into the second half of the fight with Filip Hrgović, then he's going to hit you, and you're going to feel his power, and you're going to feel his aura. And like I said, he's a very confident boxer. He's not all that. If you put all the evidence on the table, there's no evidence that he just lays down. He comes to fight. He's going to come to win, and he will believe that he will win. Question number 5. Are boxing fans too quick to dismiss Hrgovic's resume simply because Itauma makes defeating good fighters look easy? I think there's different boxing camps. You got the camp that says that Itauma destroys Hrgovic. He may well destroy Hrgovic, but it's not that conclusion that's the problem. It's the way they dismiss Hrgovic's resume. So you got that camp. Then you got like a smaller Filip Hrgovic camp that says he's going to destroy Itauma. And potentially that can happen. But again, they might minimize Itauma. So you got these two camps, and they're minimizing each other's strengths. And then you got another camp which would, highlight that Filip Hrgovic is strong competition, but they just feel that Itauma is elite. So it's like saying, okay, I think Filip Hrgovic is good and he's going to provide a good test, but Itauma is elite, and therefore I think he's going to win 7 to 8 rounds. And I think that's more respectable. I don't like it when people dismiss people's credentials. To me, I just think it's ignorant. Question 6. If Hrgovic starts well and puts Itauma under genuine pressure, will we finally discover how Itauma responds to adversity? Of course. And it depends. There's a difference between winning a round, getting hit with a good shot, and then getting dropped for the first time in your career. Of course, what would be interesting is if Filip Hrgovic, in his last fights, I've noticed that every now and then he invests to the body. It'll be interesting to see if Filip Hrgovic can get any body shots off and how Itauma will react to that. The jab battle is going to be particularly interesting. Can he win the jab battle? If Filip Hrgovic can win the jab battle, this becomes a very interesting fight. And or if he can time his straight right through the jab, so when Itauma is throwing the jab, if he can time his right hand and his backhand to take away Itauma's jab and then get momentum with his backhand, then again, this becomes a very interesting fight. And that will be a unique puzzle for Itauma to solve, because he hasn't been put in that situation before. He hasn't been hit on a consistent basis. He hasn't fought someone who has been able to implement a jab or hit him with like 10, 20 jabs. He hasn't fought someone who can hit him consistently with the straight right. He hasn't fought someone that can hit him consistently with body shots or make him uncomfortable or put him in uncomfortable positions. So yes, this would be interesting, but there's different levels to adversity. If it's like 1 to 100, you could have a 50, you could have a 55, and then if you get knocked down, maybe that's like a 90. So there's different levels of adversity. But I would expect that if we look at the evidence, we're going to get a Hrgovic that's going to bring some form of adversity. And I guess the only caveat to that is if Itauma scores an early knockout. And then the final question is, Itauma Is Itauma chasing a world title because he wants to be champion or because deep down he is afraid of being forgotten? It's very hard to understand someone else's psychology. Well, it's hard to understand our own psychology, let alone someone else's. Perhaps that might be true. Maybe it's not true. I'm pretty sure, being in boxing, that winning a world title is important. And I'm pretty sure that if you want to make a name as a boxer, that you don't want to be forgotten. There is the marketing machine of Itauma is gaining traction. The car of Moses Itauma is moving forward very quickly, and he's being spoken about. He is part of the boxing algorithm. He's part of the British boxing algorithm. He's part of the British heavyweight boxing algorithm, and he's part of the boxing algorithm in general. And for some people, that's a nice feeling, that respect, that admiration. And if you think that losing will make you forgotten, and if you're scared of being forgotten, or if that's something that affects you, then that to me is motivation to train hard and be the best version of yourself. And ultimately, Moses Itauma wants to come into every fight being the best version of himself, and this fight is no exception.